I'm here today with my son Matthew. Hello Matthew, how you doing?
Hi Dad, very
Sorry,
well. How are
I've got
you?
to call him Matt today, not Matthew. I'll get told off otherwise. How you doing?
Very well, thanks. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, what about you?
Good. I'm very well. So we're here to obviously to discuss the concepts of future-proofing yourself and development and self-development and personal development. And really interested to find out how Matt has made that transition from education, university, into the working environment, and what's gone well, what hasn't gone so well, what he's learned, and some of the stories along the way, and what advice he's been given that he's found helpful. But then to finish off, as we normally do with these videos and podcasts, is really keen to find out what his future plans are in terms of his development. So this is a series of podcasts and YouTube videos that we're doing with people who've been in education, coming out to the working world, and we're doing a whole week of these. Yesterday, we spoke to Roman, and tomorrow we're going to be speaking to Johnny. And yeah, so please do check into those, because there's some really interesting stuff that's coming out of these. So the first question, as always, is, could you give us sort of a brief overview of your story, of where you're at in terms of moving from education to the working world?
Sure. Well, I went to the University of Exeter, which I absolutely loved. My famous Uncle Andrew told me that university were the best years of your career or your life, and so far he's certainly been correct. It was awesome. I made some awesome mates. I was very fortunate with the halls I was in. We had an absolutely awesome time. And then also I absolutely loved the sport, which was brilliant. The facilities down there are absolutely world class, and as I'm sure you remember coming to watch me play football on many afternoon, and cricket, we had a really good time. So I studied business management at Exeter, and yeah, had a really great time down there. Halfway through my university career, if you like, I did a undergraduate placement as part of my course, and I went on the undergraduate placement at Volkswagen Group UK, with Audi UK actually, and I absolutely loved it. I had probably the year that I've learned the most in out of any year of any education. It was just, I had no idea what to expect of the working world, and I went in and got given some really good responsibility. Really enjoyed working for the brand. The passion at that place is just quite fantastic, and just had a really great year. I was very fortunate through that year to make some brilliant contacts. And after I'd gone back to university and done my final year there, I was fortunate enough to have contacts in, or be given contacts in Audi Singapore and Audi Australia, where I went and worked for 6 months in each, which again were quite fantastic experiences for me. Having done that, I then came back to the UK, and I've just started, or not just started, it's now nearly 2 years down the line, but I'm on the graduate program at Volkswagen Group, which has been brilliant as well. I've done various rotations in different parts of the company. Some roles contain a lot of project management, which I've enjoyed. I did a role in market analysis, and now I'm working in the customer experience department. So my whole career through Volkswagen has been brilliant. It's given me an awesome rounding, and it's really set me in good stead for the rest.
Brilliant. Okay, good. So obviously you did your internship, and then you did the traveling to Singapore and Australia. So you had that work experience. But if you sort of perhaps go back to, I don't know, your first or second year of your university, and how life was now and how life is now in the working environment, has the working environment met your expectations, or was your perceptions different?
If I'm honest, back in second year of university, it was all a bit of a whirlwind, and I hadn't really thought of what the working world was like. I had no real idea what to expect. So if I'm perfect honest, I didn't really have many expectations. One thing I didn't realise, and I learnt to realise throughout my undergrad year, was the importance of finding a job which you really enjoy and love. And I really noticed this as well when I was over in Singapore, because I absolutely loved the job role I was doing there, and getting up for work and being really excited to get there, which is something which I've been quite fortunate to have throughout my career. I think it's really helped. So I didn't really realise when I was at university and through education, not only the importance of finding something which you're going to be successful at, but finding something which you really genuinely enjoy.
Yeah, that's very wise. And as I've mentioned before on these podcasts and videos, that quite often I do speak to a lot of people, and I say to them, you know, why have you enjoyed the last 20 years of your working life? You know, what do you love about it? And they look at me as if I'm absolutely mad and go, God, I haven't enjoyed this. I said, come on, you must have. And I think it is really important, you know, to find out, you know, what your passions are and what's important to you. Because as you say, you get up in the morning and think, yeah, let's have some of that. So that may answer a bit of the next question, but what are the key things that you've learned perhaps from your education and in the working world that you perhaps apply on a regular basis to your working life?
If I'm honest, the theory that I learned at university probably hasn't been quite as useful as at the time you think it would be. You think you go to university, and I feel that I probably don't use much of the theory that I learned in my day-to-day life. But what you certainly do learn, particularly when you get to university, and what I found incredibly useful, is skills such as how to construct an argument, how to put together a presentation, and they've been really useful. So they've stood me in good stead when I've got into the working world, through the group projects you do at university, through the presentations I've had to done. I got a really good grounding, if you like, on how to structure those kind of presentations and arguments, so that when you come into the working world, you know how to deliver them in a professional environment.
Yeah.
I think that's been really useful. I'd say another thing which I don't think myself and quite a lot of my mates probably utilised as much as we could have so far, but I've developed a really great network of friends. I've been fortunate enough to have friends working in all sorts of wonderful different industries and different businesses, and that's provided us with a really good network for the future, which we can utilise and find out about what different people do and really broaden your horizons. So I think it's not something I've necessarily learned, but it's something I gained through university, which I think is starting to be incredibly useful and will definitely be useful in the future.
I think that's so important. It's one thing I really regret is not understanding or even been made apparent to me at your age was the importance of networking, not to do each other favours necessarily, but just for information and advice. And I've built that up now. I've got a great network of people that I can go to, but I think, yeah, we always think about networking as walking around with a business card and saying, hello, I'm very important, and what do you do? And it's not that. It's just having a really good list of, you know, good friends, really, that you can rely on and have perhaps conversations you wouldn't have with other people. So we'll come back to that as a really important point. And perhaps through your network and perhaps the people that you have spoken to, because you have worked with some, you know, some pretty interesting people, what would you say is the one of the best bits of advice you've been given?
That the importance of communication, and that communication is quite often the most important skill in the working world. You can have all the technical ability you like, you can be the smartest guy in the room, but unless you can communicate it well, and that's not just the way you present and talk, but also the way you listen and the way you understand the way different people want to interact, and understanding that some people are happy to start off with a joke and mess about before going into business as usual, and other people are quite serious, and understanding how they work and their attitudes towards work, and then learning off the back of that how to communicate with them is incredibly important to get buy-in. And I've always, someone at work always said to me, always start with the why when you communicate with someone. Let them know why you're doing it before you go in and say, bang, this is what we want to do. Sometimes setting the context is a lot more important than actually delivering what you want to say to them. So I'd say that's probably been the best bit of advice I've been given. Other bits of advice which I think have been incredibly useful is you can't always please everyone. There are always so many different stakeholders involved, and as long as you go about doing what you need to do in a professional way, you need to understand that not everyone's going to be completely happy with what's delivered because of the contradicting objectives that a lot of people have, and it's finding a way to find a balance and make sure that you can deliver something which is beneficial to the company and to the area of the business that you're trying to work in. And I appreciate that sometimes other people might disagree with that, and not to get really caught up on it.
I mean, I was going to ask that as my next question, in terms of obviously working for a very large organisation, and when people don't agree with you, or perhaps see it the same way. Is it sometimes difficult not to take it personal?
Yeah, especially when I'd say on the undergrad year, when you're first fresh into it, you're not used to people sometimes saying the harsh reality of things. And I think that undergrad year was really good for that, to understand that that's the way sometimes the world works. And so, yeah, it's sometimes quite hard to stomach. And I guess it's how you learn to deal with those situations, and how do you then bounce back, if you like.
Yeah, very important. So what have you enjoyed most in your career? I think I know what you're going to answer, but what would you say is, what aspects have you enjoyed the most?
If I think personally, no, specifically from a working perspective, working on business change and transformation, and finding ways to move your business forward in the right direction, utilising new technologies, and really making change for the better. I've really enjoyed getting involved in projects which do things to really leverage the company's position and work with the future of the industry. Off the back of that, on a more personal note, I've absolutely loved working in different countries and understanding different cultures and the way different people work, which was specifically interesting, especially in Singapore, learning how they work compared to, say, Australia and England. I worked for the same company in each 3 countries, but the way we conducted business was quite different, and it was absolutely fascinating, and something which I really loved and enjoyed was going into those different environments and learning how they work.
Yeah, wonderful. And the most challenging aspects in those areas?
It kind of actually comes off the most challenging parts of my career so far. I've actually come off the back of the bits that I've enjoyed the most. So putting in place business change and putting in new systems and new ways of working. And most of the challenging parts of my career have actually been trying to deal with that change and educate people in the business who maybe aren't completely on board with it at the start, and seeing that as a challenge to overcome. And at the end of the projects that I've worked on, where people up front haven't been completely on board with what we've done or what we were doing at the time, to look back after a year, and when they are on board, and the satisfaction you get out of that, whilst it was challenging to convince them up front that this is what we should be doing and that this was the right thing to do, it was really quite refreshing to see at the end how they've come around to it, and how the great change that we've made to the business has now been realised.
Yeah, and obviously we're currently on lockdown. Do you feel that once, whatever the new normal is going to look like, do you feel that people are going to have to adapt and accept more change a lot quicker, even more so than before?
Yeah, I certainly think this lockdown period, if you like, is going to accelerate change, and it's going to bring it quicker, because it's just going to have to happen. Otherwise, certain businesses aren't going to be able to continue to operate as they do or as they did 2 or 3 months ago. One thing I think or I hope it will have, and I think it will have on a positive point, is that there's a lot of talk about flexible working and the ability to work remotely, and that's an incredibly good thing to be able to do, even from like an environmental perspective. The amount of business travel that goes on, and sometimes realizing that, or I'm hoping that this is making us realize that actually we don't need to fly around the world and travel up and down the country to make business meetings, because we've proven to ourselves in the last 3 months under lockdown, say, that it's actually possible to do from the location that you're normally based at. So I think it actually taught us a lot about different ways of working and what is actually possible. There were a lot of theories which probably weren't tested in all that much depth before this lockdown, and I think we've now been forced to test them, and I think certainly a lot of them are actually proven to be quite efficient, and so I think it'll be good to see how they continue once we come out of this period.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. I've just come off a call to a company that sells into the pharmaceutical industry, and also they obviously sell into the NHS and hospitals. And I was quite surprised he hadn't really thought about this so much, was that he's got a sales team that goes out and visits hospitals. And I said, and they're all sort of really struggling working from home. And I said, yeah, but they're not going to be able to go back into hospitals to sell for months. Who knows when they're going to be able to go back? And he said, Gosh, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. And him and his team have got to look at a totally different way of communicating. And I said to him, you now need to see, now is going to be the normal for quite a long time for your team. How are you going to now communicate effectively? And he sort of went a bit quiet and thought, yeah, perhaps we need to have a further conversation on this. So I think what you're saying is fast-tracked a lot of situations a lot quicker. So we'll come back to that at the very end, because there's a question I want to talk to you about age diversity in the different generations, but I want to keep that till the end. But yeah, is there sort of, with hindsight, which is a wonderful thing, if you could go back to, I don't know, perhaps starting your internship, is there any sort of advice that you would now give yourself or someone similar to you going into that environment for the first time?
Yeah, in terms of, I think I've learned to ask lots of questions, and it's quite a cliche one, but there's no such thing as a stupid question. And the importance of questioning everything you don't always understand. When you're at the early stages of your career, you naturally have a lot of questions, and it's always best to ask them up front as opposed to sit tight thinking you should know that piece of information. So I've quite often learned that when you do ask those questions, there's actually more than it's more than just you who doesn't know the answers. I mean, quite a lot of the time, other people in the room are thinking the exact same as you, and also aren't prepared to ask the question in the worry of not sounding knowledgeable enough, or as knowledgeable as they should be. And actually, by asking those questions, you actually find out information not just for yourself but for others as well. And not just asking questions on subject matters, but just questioning why we do different things, because a lot of time things have been done in the same way for a number of years and they've been successful in that, but what's to say that's going to be successful moving forward? And sometimes by you questioning, quite a lot of the time you get a good answer, and there's no reason why that should change. But every now and then there's the odd time where you question and actually you realise that there maybe is a better way of doing things, and it's important to keep bringing these fresh ideas in and keep questioning the way we work, because that will help us move forward in the long run.
Yeah, very much so. And, you know, as you mentioned earlier in this interview with regards to the why question, it's so important, and about being inquisitive and asking good questions, you know, to understand and also to challenge ethically. Not to say, look, you know, why are we doing that? That's stupid. But come on, I need to understand why we do that, because that can perhaps help answer other questions and generate other ideas. So that's sort of what you have been doing. Let's sort of turn it around a little bit now and sort of look at the future. And the first question, which who knows, but what's your industry going to look like in the next few years, or perhaps the next 18 months, 12 months, 6 months?
It's a good question, and it's quite appropriate this time, because I think our industry in particular is going through the quickest change it's ever, or the most change it's ever done in its history. I think there'll be quite large changes to the way our products are consumed. I think there'll be a shift towards mobility as a service, and it'll be our responsibility to provide mobility as a service, as opposed to simply be a maker and seller of cars and parts. I think that'll be the biggest shift, because we make a lot of fantastic cars, and we sell them incredibly effectively, but there's going to become a point where there is becoming a point where consumer demands are changing, and people don't always want to buy a car and have that car for a number of years. They want to be able to switch that service on and off, as you're seeing with a lot of other industries as well. So I think that'll be the biggest change, besides all electronification, which needs to come as quick as it can. But I think, we'll start to see a change in the way our products are consumed.
Yeah. And with all this change, how do you feel that you need to sort of develop and grow and future-proof yourself to continue to stay relevant and value within the working environment?
I think I need to continue to be inquisitive and continue to teach myself and go out and be proactively upskilling myself. Not always wait to be taught or told how something works. We've got fantastic resources inside our company and also outside the company, in terms of just things like Google. You can always go in, and there's so many online resources and courses you can go and do in your own time. and to proactively go out and upskill myself in areas which I have an interest in, but don't necessarily know about. So I think that's incredibly important as I move forward, is to keep going above and beyond and being proactive in my search to develop myself. And also something touching upon a point I raised slightly earlier in terms of this network that we've got of friends. Be more inquisitive as to what they do and what their jobs are about, because it's not something we really do at the moment. When I go to the pub with my mates, we normally spend most of the time taking the mick out of each other, not actually discussing what each other do in our jobs. But I think there's a lot of interesting conversations to have. Should I do that? And it's certainly an opportunity which I probably haven't used that much so far, but something which I definitely should do in the future. Yeah. And the third point, I think, is always to look beyond the next job role. So not always to go into a role thinking this is the role I want to be in, but always to go into a role or to look for a role and think, okay, that's going to be my role in the next year or so. What's going to be my role in the next 5 years or so? And how is that role that I'm going to go into going to help me get to there? So looking beyond just your next job.
Yeah, very wise. And I think, yeah, definitely your network of friends, it's what I call free learning. It's what I love about my job, is that I get to work with so many different organisations and people who've set businesses up, done lots of different things. And you sit there and you can ask them all sorts of questions and they give you all this free learning. And yeah, and sort of you can learn from their experiences, and also it helps you to think what you do want to do and what you don't want to do. In the past, perhaps we used to go and perhaps try a job and then realise we didn't like it, but perhaps you can fast track that a little bit more by having these conversations with people and finding out people are similar to you. What do they like? What do you like? Okay, well, I won't mind trying that. So yeah, do keep those conversations up. So coming back to the change and the change in dealing with change in organisations, the working environment and everything. There's never been such a diversity in terms of age in the working environment. We've got people 17 and 18 coming into the working environment, and perhaps people working in their 70s. And we've got a huge cross-section and lots of different ways of thinking. How do you find that can sometimes be challenging in the working environment?
I wouldn't say challenging, but I certainly think it's an opportunity for two, or you don't want to just split the generations into two, but you've got your older generations and your younger generations, and I see it as a two-way opportunity, if you like. Us as the young generations have got an awful lot that we can learn off people who have been around for a long time, because they've been there, they've done it all, and they know how it all works. And it's probably our responsibility to try and get into their minds and really work out why have certain things been successful in the past. But with that, I think there's also the opportunity for people who have been around for a long time to learn from our different perspectives. We've grown up in a social media world where we've grown up learning in a slightly different way to other people. So there's a lot that we can also give back to people who are more experienced than ourselves as well. So I don't see it as a challenge, but also more of an opportunity for two different or more than two different generations to really work together and learn off each other, as opposed to see it as a hindrance in terms of your cliche, old people are set in their ways. I wouldn't say that's correct in any working environment that I've been in. But we've got the opportunity to learn off each other and then move forward like that.
Yeah, and I think that's really quite important. And then again, that comes back to our network of people. And I love having conversations with how people see things differently. As you know, unfortunately, I lost my aunt last year, who died at the age of 93. And I used to find her a brilliant source of information just because she saw the world from a totally different perspective. And I actually learned loads from her, as well as, work, from yourself and some of your friends and other people that I talk to. There is such diversity of age, and as you say, a great opportunity to learn from each other. So thank you very much for that. It was really insightful. And I think sort of some of the key things that you've talked about is, enjoy what you do and make sure that you have a career that you have a passion for. Obviously, so you can make some money out of it is always important. But I think that's really quite important. And you talked at length about the importance of your networking and making sure that you utilise and use that more. And I liked also what you said about the ability to learn about the importance of communication in business. And I think this is very true. Sometimes you get some brilliant technical professionals, you know, very clever people, but then have a real problem getting their message over to other people who perhaps can't get on their technical level. And you talked a lot about dealing with change, and we're going through loads of it. And it's about sort of being open and agile to it, and you know, the new business word of pivoting, which has really hit us hard recently. But I do particularly like the inquisitive bit. You may not know this, but I've done a video about being inquisitive, and I've talked about when you were very younger and had a traction engine that you blew up because you kept saying, "Dad, can I have a go? Can I have a go?" And if you can go and find that video on my YouTube site about being inquisitive, it's wonderful. And I've actually still got that traction engine with its
windowsill.
Sorry?
It's on your windowsill, isn't it?
Well, there's one on my windowsill and there's one in the other room as well. So I know there was two, but I have got the actual one. So if anybody hasn't seen that about being inquisitive, and if you're not very good at asking questions and being inquisitive, just go and ask questions. It's amazing what you do find out. So thank you very much for your time. As we said, we're doing a whole series of these this week. And so tomorrow we've got Johnny on, who's going to give us an insight into his world. I hope you can join us for that. And you can find this on LinkedIn, on my podcast and the YouTube channel, where you'll find lots of other sources of information on there as well. So thanks, Matt. Thanks for your time. See you soon.
See you later.
Okay, bye.